Now let's have a little trip down memory lane to Donald Trump's first term when he warned the Germans about becoming too reliant on Russian energy.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
The German contingent thought that was hilarious. And the man you can see sitting at the front there, laughing his silly little head off, is Christoph Huchsen, laughing and thinking it was all one big fat joke. Now remember him, because I'm going to come back to him. And as you know, Trump was right. Germany's dependence on Russian energy has been disastrous for the nation in recent years. But do you think the Germans have learned to listen to good advice? No. When JD Vance gave a groundbreaking speech in Munich last week about the biggest threats to Europe coming from within, when he warned them about the sinister suppression of free speech in European countries, the growing anti-democracy sentiment among the elite, and the manner in which they have allowed millions of unvetted migrants to flood in, well, the Germans were again aghast. You can almost hear the gasps as JD Vance speaks.
No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration.
And you guessed it, among the most appalled by JD Vance's speech was this guy who had a little cry about it.
So let us stick to these values. Let us not reinvent them, but focus on strengthening their consistent application. Let me conclude, and this becomes difficult.
Yes, that's Christoph Huchsen again. And if you think those tears are for his nation or for Europe, which he helped damage alongside Ms. Merkel, well, you'd be wrong. The tears were for himself, because the German diplomat is stepping down from his illustrious position as chairman of the Munich Security Conference. Joining me now is Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, the Germans just refuse to listen to good advice.
Rita, it would not be the first, and it's not going to be the last time that the Germans have failed to listen to some advice of varying degrees of strength from the Americans, I suppose. 3 cheers for JD Vance. My goodness. I mean, that was a barn burner of a speech. That, frankly, is why we wanted JD Vance to be the vice president of the United States, or at least why I wanted him. I mean, Rita, I wrote an op-ed column last March titled Vice President JD Vance, making the case for JD Vance to be Donald Trump's running mate. And this is exactly what I thought we were going to get. And I am just grinning ear to ear delighted that this is indeed what we are getting. Germany is the heart of the European liberal imperium. Brussels, Belgium is literally where the European Union is based. I know because I've been there to the building, but Germany is the most economically powerful country in the world. So to go into the the most economically powerful country in Europe. So to go into the lion's den there and to say what he said about free speech, about energy independence, about migration from third world Islamist hellholes there, man, that guy has a spine. And I just cannot wait to see what JD Vance does for the rest of his vice presidential tenure, because if that is any indication of what is to come, we are in for a historic vice presidency.
Absolutely. And I think after that vice presidency, he has to be hot favourite to be the 48th president of the United States. And it will be quite a, can you just imagine him continuing that Trump agenda if he's got, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm thinking about 2 terms for JD Vance and what could be achieved if you've got those solid 12 years of meaningful change in America. It's exciting to think about. But let's stay in Germany for a minute. Let's look at the manner in which they are cracking down on free expression, or what they call online hate speech.
Inside, 6 armed officers searched a suspect's home, then seized his laptop and cell phone. Prosecutors say those electronics may have been used to commit a crime. The crime, posting a racist cartoon online. At the exact same time across Germany, more than 50 similar raids played out. Part of what prosecutors say is a coordinated effort to curb online hate speech in Germany.
Josh, I'd be willing to bet money that many of those online posts aren't even racist, given stating facts about crime rates and immigration levels is considered hate speech in some quarters. But when you watch that, that's precisely what JD Vance was talking about. This crackdown on free speech, this suppression of citizens who are concerned about what's happening to their country.
Yeah, Rita, the country of Germany suppressing free speech. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, wait, yes, tragically, we have been down this road before. But by the way, Margaret Brennan, the anchor on CBS's Face the Nation, earlier in the same day yesterday, well, she was talking about how there was apparently too much free speech, and that caused the Holocaust there. So whether it's Face the Nation or whether it's 60 Minutes, CBS apparently is all in on an anti-free speech censorious agenda. Makes you wonder why CBS is actually a distant third in the mainstream media ratings behind NBC and ABC. Frankly, all of the ratings are falling, but CBS is dwindling more than the others there. But the state of free speech all across Europe, in both the continent and the UK, is genuinely appalling right now. And the UK in particular really makes me want to cry, because I'm something of an Anglophile, actually. I love the Anglo-American inheritance. I mean, frankly, Britain gave the world free speech in many ways there. But Rita, I'll share with you this brief anecdote. So Keir Starmer is the very left-wing prime minister right now in Westminster in London. It has become pretty common to refer to him as two-tier Keir because of his two-tier system of justice. I actually put that on my show and on social media. I had a friend who's a lawyer in London, Rita, get a load of this. He messaged me and said, Josh, you should take that down. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you won't believe it, but because of the long-arm jurisdiction statute that Britain has these days, you could be prosecuted for that. For me tweeting here from the United States that Keir Starmer is two-tier Keir. That's the state of so-called free speech in the UK. Tragically, in Germany, based on what we just saw, I think it's actually even worse.
Now let's go to the US, where the Department of Government Efficiency has had a big win in the courts against the lawfare that the Democrats are launching. I know you wrote about this in Newsweek. You wrote about this so-called judicial resistance movement that has sprung up. And you say that these people involved in this may think they're acting nobly, but they're in fact acting unconstitutionally, and in the end, they're going to be humiliated.
They're going to be humiliated because they are way out of line. And they're way out of line because the federal government cannot be shut down by the ruling of a lone lower court federal judge deep in the bowels of his chambers in Hawaii or Alaska or Florida or Maine. That is simply not the system of governance that our founding fathers here in America set up for us. In fact, in an 1804 letter that our third president, Thomas Jefferson, wrote to Abigail Adams, the wife of John Adams, he famously said in this letter that at the time that the judiciary here in America starts to decide cases not merely for the litigants before it, but purporting to bind the entirety of the federal government, that would be a despotic branch. Abraham Lincoln took the exact same approach. It's simply not the system we have here. So these so-called nationwide injunctions have to end. That is not part of the judicial power of which our Constitution speaks. The United States Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in here sooner rather than later. Thankfully, Rita, I actually am pretty optimistic that they will do so. This is a Supreme Court that is well constituted to rule correctly when it comes to bread and butter structural separation of powers issues. But it's incumbent upon the Trump Department of Justice to directly tee up that appeal. Once they do so, I think that the Supreme Court will grant it, and I think that they will rule correctly.
Now, I covered Tom Hanks's pathetic antics on Saturday Night Live. I don't know how else to describe them. It was exceptionally unfunny, lacking in any sort of wit or intelligence or humour. And I've got to ask you, Josh, why would such a mainstream actor trash his own brand in this way? If you're going to trash your own brand and infuriate the majority of the country, then at least, I don't know, be interesting, be funny, be clever in some way. This was just lame.
It really does seem beneath the dignity of Tom Hanks, doesn't it? I mean, Tom Hanks, once upon a time, was a brilliant actor.
Maybe not.
I mean, you had maybe not at this point later in his career, but look, earlier in his career, I mean, Forrest Gump, Philadelphia, I mean, Catch Me If You Can, even the Steven Spielberg movie from the early aughts. I mean, Tom Hanks has been in a lot of classics going back 25, 30 years. Once upon a time, it's probably hard for this audience to believe. Once upon a time, Saturday Night Live here in America was actually pretty funny. I mean, once upon a time, we had people like Chris Farley. We had actually genuinely talented comedians. I mean, to this day, a lot of the great stand-up comics here in America really kind of came up through the ranks of Saturday Night Live. But it has been a very, very long time since they have attracted anything remotely resembling high caliber comic talent. I couldn't even tell you the last time that I tuned in, frankly, on a Saturday evening, and I'm particularly very pleased that I happened to miss this dreadful Tom Hanks performance.
Oh, it was just embarrassing. I was embarrassed for him watching it. That's how bad it was. Now, I love your take on Jerry Seinfeld not giving a stuff about offending the pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli movement. Have a look at this.
Jerry, can I get a selfie? Sure. Free Palestine.
I don't care about Palestine.
That's sad.
Now, that's how you do it, Tom Hanks. If you're going to be controversial, at least, I don't know, be interesting and a little bit funny. I'd imagine Josh is copping all sorts of flack for that, but I doubt he cares.
He doesn't care. And kudos to Jerry Seinfeld for taking a righteous and correct stance on this particular issue. I mean, he was trending this direction for years. Jerry Seinfeld, many years ago, I first remember him speaking out against woke cancel culture on American college campuses. This is clearly an issue that he cares about. He visited Israel after October 7th. There was actually, he's a diehard New York Mets baseball fan. There was actually a clip of Jerry Seinfeld at a Mets game back during baseball season a few months ago here in the U.S., and they kind of zoomed in on him, and he was wearing his Mets uniform, and he said, "Let's go Mets and let's go IDF." So he's been very public about this for a while now. But, this son of a you-know-what here on camera, that guy had that coming, frankly. And good for Jerry Seinfeld for not backing away in the heat of the moment there. I hope that he only doubles down from here. I think he will, actually.
I don't know if you're aware, but he did a tour of Australia last year, and there were these hecklers in the crowd, always these pro-Palestinian plants who halfway through the show would start shouting "Free Palestine" and "River to the Sea" or whatever else they were shouting. And he handled it again beautifully. He just mocked them. He went at them. He did not back away. He didn't try to appease. He didn't try to ignore them. He made them part of the show. And I thought it was really quite effective. He did that in multiple cities in Australia. Before you go, we've seen polling showing how popular Donald Trump's key policies are. We've been discussing that earlier this week. But it's not just the policies that are popular. Despite the overwhelming negative publicity the president receives, his own popularity is on the rise. This latest poll shows 55% approve of him now. That's a decent approval rating, 43% disapprove. Josh, that's a net gain of 12% for the president.
It's actually even more than that if you go back to his first term. Donald Trump spent the majority of his first term with an underwater approval rating. By the way, so did Barack Obama. So it's not like Donald Trump had anything unique. Joe Biden definitely had an underwater approval rating there. So, I mean, frankly, Americans have been so fed up with the government for so long that to have any president, frankly, with an above water approval rating there, you probably have to go back to the very early days of the Barack Obama administration before he went totally off the rails, if I had to guess. But it's been a hot minute, so to speak, there. And the reason for that is because Donald Trump leads what I like to refer to as a coalition of the common sense. It is really not a particularly partisan movement here. You have ex-Democrats like RFK Jr., like Tulsi Gabbard. It frankly is a coalition of people who are just sick of stupid crap. I'm sorry to not phrase it more artfully, but that really basically is what it is. It is a coalition of people that are sick of gender ideology. They are sick of this idea of universal values and mass migration policy there. They just want normalcy. They want basic common sense stuff. Thankfully, Donald Trump came in with a mighty vengeance in this MAGA 2.0 second term, and he is delivering oodles and oodles of good old-fashioned common sense.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.